18. The Mystery Rockets. In Chapter 1, we have already very briefly mentioned the mystery ghost rockets that appeared over Scandinavia in 1946. The French newspaper, Le Figaro, reported, "More than 2,000 ghost rockets have been reported during the past few months over Sweden. They are the subject of jokes on the music hall stage, but the Swedish and Danish military staff are taking the matter seriously, and have begun an investigation." There were numerous references to these sightings in Scandinavian papers. At first there was some speculation that they might have been of Russian origin, but this soon was discounted. Bjorn Overby, one of Norway's regular Flying Saucer Review correspondents, in an article in that magazine called Ghost Bombs over Sweden, stated, "But why should anyone have been interested in dispatching secret weapons over Sweden? Better to have gone to a deserted place to test them. In addition, one might ask who was capable of making such weapons at that time? The German experts had fled to the USA, and those few who had been captured by the Russians were known not to be capable of making such weapons, a fact known to the Swedish army." Overby went on to quote from the Aftenposten of July 17, 1946. "A large number of rockets have been observed during the last few days. They have been seen all over Scandinavia, and even from Finland we have received stories about objects moving with tremendous speed in the night skies. It is now believed that they are rockets constructed on entirely new principles." However, Le Figaro, in its story of September 5, reported that the ghost rockets did not by any means always travel at such tremendous speeds. The newspaper stated, 1. The projectiles are in the shape of cigars. 2. Flames are projected out of their tail. The color is orange, but some people have said they were green. 3. They travel at an altitude of 300 to 1,000 meters. 4. Their speed is about that of an aeroplane. Some say a rather slow airplane. 5. They do not make any noise, except a slight whistling. For instance, Overby gives us this example. July, Nurlan. A silvery-colored torpedo was seen in the sky. It moved at an almost uncanny slow speed, and its altitude of flight was very low. After a time it disappeared behind some clouds. After giving some more reports, Overby wrote, "The Army, having made a semi-official investigation during July, promised at the beginning of August to produce a report on the observations. This report never materialized, possibly because of so-called national security, or perhaps the investigation led to results that they did not dare publish, either for fear of not being believed, or of creating mass hysteria. The theory that the objects were comets or asteroids had been rejected by so many scientists, that it was no longer of interest. All that remained was wild speculation, mingled with the feeling that these things were not of earthly origin. A large number of the objects seen over Scandinavia were not nearly as large as those observed in the earlier flaps described in the last few chapters over the USA, Britain and New Zealand. In fact, a lot of them were only about 10 feet in length. Possibly they were remote-controlled objects sent out by some bigger mother ships located at a much higher altitude in the Earth's atmosphere. This, of course, is pure conjecture. For instance, the Dagens Nyheter reported on August 9, Laxa. At 8 p.m., 6 persons saw an object passing over the rooftops. It was shaped like a 9-feet-long cigar, and at the nose we could see some small spheres. A bluish light was produced at the rear. No sound was heard. The last report came at the end of August. Then, there were no more ghost rockets. As suddenly as they came, abruptly they departed. However, we should not close this chapter without mentioning that the modern UFO era had already begun at the beginning of that month in the USA, and this, also, involved a cigar-shaped object. At about 6 p.m. on August 1, 1946, Captain Jack Puckett was flying a C-47 plane from Langley Field, Virginia, to MacDill Field, Florida. The aircraft was at 4,000 feet and about 30 miles northeast of Tampa when Captain Puckett and his crew were startled to see a cigar-shaped object hurtling towards them in horizontal flight at the same altitude. When the cigar was about 1,000 yards distant, it swerved to avoid them, and as the UFO passed them the crew could see that the object was twice the size of a B-29 bomber, and had luminous portholes. In addition to Captain Puckett, both his co-pilot, Lieutenant Henry, and his engineer witnessed the object. When they landed, a full report was given to the base operations section of MacDill Field. A signed report of Captain Puckett's remarkable sighting is on file at NICAP headquarters. For some extraordinary reason, this important incident is not mentioned in the copious Condon report. Once again, we ask the same questions. What was the purpose of this sustained demonstration of cigar-shaped objects over Scandinavia in 1946? 19. The mystery progression. The following year, 1947, saw the modern UFO phenomena erupt in the United States. From then onwards, an enormous variety of UFOs materialized, in all conceivable shapes and sizes everywhere on Earth. Now, possibly you will have noticed something. 1. The cigar flaps of 1896-97, and 1909 in the USA, the UK, and New Zealand, occurred at a time when we were just starting to develop airships. 2. The mystery aeroplanes of the 30s were around. Actually, according to Keel, since 1910, at a time when our concentration was on developing aircraft. The 30s saw many wonderful pioneer record-breaking flights. Remember Amy and Jim Mollison? 3. The mystery rockets in 1946 came just after we had used the atom bomb, and we had now got the basic nuclear physics which would pave the way for our venture into space. We had, of course, been experimenting with rockets for some time, and it was rocketry that was to provide the thrust to get our spaceships into outer space in the years ahead. 4. Then came the UFOs in their infinite variety of shapes and sizes. Perhaps, to show us that we do not have to rely on the expensive rocketry, once we had graduated. If we could overcome what is called gravity, then maybe we could put up almost anything. In any case, that is what we were seeing up in our skies, UFOs of almost every possible shape and size. The main point about all this is that there appears to have been some form of progression. The airship, aeroplane, the rocket, and then the spaceship. Possibly we have some slender clue here. Now let us explore two possible theories. 1. First, let us look at the idea that the sky people are trying to encourage us to get a high degree of technology through our own efforts, but occasionally giving us a shot in the arm, maybe unobtrusively, and at the same time, certainly in the last few decades, by giving us demonstrations. I could be wide of the mark, but an incident credited to the legendary Saint Germain, whom Frederick the Great referred to as the man who does not die, comes to mind. According to Madame de Pompadour, Germain claimed to possess the secret of eternal youth. He always looked about 40 or 45 years old. Many people claimed to have seen him in their old age looking exactly the same as they met him in their own 40s. A brilliant linguist, Saint Germain spoke German, English, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, Greek, Latin, Sanskrit, Arabic, and Chinese, besides being a great musician and an excellent alchemist. Anyway, Franz Greyhofer, in his Recollections of Vienna, recounts the following incident in the life of the astonishing Germain. Germain then gradually passed into a solemn mood. For a few seconds he became as rigid as a statue, his eyes, which were always expressive beyond words, became dull and colorless. Presently, however, his whole being became reanimated. He made a movement with his hand, as if in signal of departure, then said, "I am leaving, do not see me. Once again you will see me. Tomorrow night I am off, I am much needed in Constantinople, then in England, there to prepare two inventions which you will have in the next century. Trains and steamboats." This event happened in the 18th century. Although the steam engine was really invented by James Watt in the 18th century, the first successful steam engine on railways was George Stephenson's rocket in 1829. The first practical steamboat was the tug Charlotte Dundas, built by William Symington, and tried in the Forth and Clyde Canal in 1802. Germain could well have been a spaceman living among us. This, I realize, is wild speculation. However, his long, almost immortal life has been well authenticated. It is a well-known fact that when the time is ripe, a new invention arrives. Often it is discovered at almost the same moment by more than one person, working independently in entirely different parts of the world. It is in the air, so to speak. Why is it in the air? Perhaps, at different times, when the time is ripe, These ideas have been planted by people like Saint Germain. Could the mystery airships have been demonstrated in the skies over the US, Britain, and New Zealand, to show what could be achieved in this direction upstairs? It is pretty interesting to note that these early cigar flaps pretty well coincided with our first efforts to get into the air at all, and of course, the modern UFO phenomena with our own initial steps into space. Maybe, we are being assisted behind the scenes, more than the public realizes. I realize that some readers may think that all this is a very naive suggestion, but some of you may think it has possibilities. Now, we will take a look at my second possibility. Here we go. 2. If you are off-planet, that is, on a planet, far off in our galaxy, or perhaps, in one of those invisible universes we have been talking about, then if you were one of them, you would try and disguise yourself, if you were making a reconnaissance of our planet for some purposes you wanted to keep to yourself. Therefore, in 1896-97, and in 1909, you would think they are now exploring the possibility of airships, and some of them have got off the ground in a primitive way. So, you appear in airships to do your reconnaissance, hoping that the people will think your ships are their own, or be written off as delusions. You appear over the USA in 1896-97, where you are helped by hoaxes and phony write-ups by journalists. In 1909 you appear over Britain in the early part of the year, and in the second portion over the skies of New Zealand. Then, in the 30s, you copy our planes, and being able to fly extra-dimensionally, the blizzards do not affect your craft in the slightest degree. Finally, you produce your ghost rockets over Scandinavia, and now we have your craft in all shapes and sizes, cavorting around the airspace of our world. Some people, including many eminent UFO writers and researchers, seem to fear you, and feel that you are planning a takeover of our planet. Well, there it is. 2 theories. Maybe both are wrong, and the answer lies in another direction. However, they may stimulate some titillation of the thought processes,